I've been thinking about something all week, and so I'm recording this off the cuff, drinking my coffee in my pajamas. Actually, that's not really true. I've actually been thinking about this for years. I just don't think I've put words to it in exactly this way. And it has to do with one of the biggest shifts that I've made in my own life over the years. And I see women do the same thing in my mentorship, and I've seen it for years. But here's the thing, and this might surprise you a little bit, but the shift had for me and has for them nothing to do with nutrition or workouts. I mean, I help them with those things, but one of the biggest shifts that I made and that I see them make has nothing really to do with those things. It doesn't have anything to do with hormones and metabolism or any of those things. Really, it actually starts a whole lot earlier than that. And I don't know if that's the way to describe it, but maybe it's more of how this is like the foundation for all of those things happening. And when it happened with me, I didn't realize that's what was going on. And here's one of the best ways that I can describe it or explain it. And then I'll break it down and kind of explain it more. But forgive me, this is going to be a little rambly today, but stick with me. All right. What I'm talking about, this shift that I'm talking about, starts with the explanation that we give for ourselves for what's happening with us, with our bodies, with what's going on in our heads, with our emotions, like what's going on in our lives at this time. And the explanation that we give ourselves, I don't think we actually realize how much power that explanation has in our lives, how much power it has over us, how much power it has to influence what happens for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years. All right. So here, let me kind of explain a little bit. I used to think that I was incredibly honest with myself. And looking back, I don't think that's actually what I was doing. I came to this conclusion some time ago. So, for example, for years in my 20s, my 30s, and especially once got into like my early 40s, the scale would go up, right? I stepped on the scale 2, 3 times a day sometimes, always every single day. And that number would go up on the scale. And I already knew what that meant. I had an explanation for it. I knew that it meant that I was not eating healthy. I had lost my focus on my health focus, right? I had lost my discipline or my ability to be consistent. I would say, okay, you've got to start a diet. You have to start exercising and be consistent with it. And then the first time I maybe skipped exercise for a day, I would say, okay, you're slipping. That's the explanation. If I got really tired to the point of being exhausted, I would say, like, you need to get your act together. Like, you need to get your shit together, get focused. And it would happen in my brain so fast that I didn't question that explanation. Like I said, I just thought I was being really honest. I was telling myself the truth. I was holding myself accountable. But here's what I eventually realized. And it's not like I went to bed one night and I woke up and had this epiphany and like, oh my gosh, I figured out what I'm doing. I'm really condensing years of study, scientific study, in depth work on myself, a focus on how the brain works at this point in midlife when we're, entering this transitional state. It was a culmination of a lot of work that I'm making sound like I just woke up and realized it wasn't that simple, okay? But what I did eventually realize is that I wasn't telling myself the truth. Not at all. I was looking for an explanation because that's what my analytical brain does, right? And I was believing the first explanation that my brain kind of landed on or, served up to me, handed to me for a lot of reasons. And there's a lot of like neuroscience that goes into why we do that. But I don't want to go into just a ton of the science behind it, but like explain what happens. And maybe you can kind of relate to like how your brain is working in this way. Because the more I thought about this and what I was doing, the more I understood, and the more, that I studied the science of it, the more I understood that our brain really, really hates unanswered questions, right? And so when there are gaps in what's going on in our lives, something happens. We want an explanation and we want it really fast. We want to understand what is going on. And so I would look at, I thought very analytically, what's going on and how can I explain it? Because that felt better than grasping for straws or feeling like unsure about it, right? And it's very uncomfortable to be uncertain about something in your life, especially when it's something that is so near and dear to you. It's so personal. It's like it's you. It's not like about other people, it's about you. And so if you don't know what's happening in your own life with your own body, internally, emotionally, psychologically, in the brain, you are very uncomfortable. Because what does that say about you? Right? So our brain wants to help us out of that discomfort. So it starts filling in the blanks for us, starts feeding up those explanations. And let me be clear about this too. The real problem isn't so much that our brain explains things. I mean, that is normal. We all do it. The problem is that we just sort of land on an explanation that is the first thing oftentimes that our brain serves up, and then we stop there. We just stop there. We don't investigate any farther. And it's actually easier for us as women in our 40s and into our 50s to stop there with that first explanation, especially if the first explanation points to you as the thing that needs fixing. It points to you as the problem. And this is one of the reasons the second half of life can feel so overwhelming to us because suddenly it feels very sudden. So many things are changing. Your body is changing, your sleep changes, your energy levels are all different than they used to be. Maybe that shakes your confidence. Your marriage feels different. Like hell, like all relationships feel different. Your parents are getting older, if you're blessed enough to still have them. Your kids don't need you in the same way anymore. Work starts changing for lots and lots of different reasons at the same time that emotionally and physically you're changing. And retirement starts kind of showing up on the horizon. So life at this stage is a lot. I used to think that going into parenthood was a lot, but I think for many of us, especially, and I'm going to kind of take a side detour here, especially for those of us who had kids when we were young, we didn't really realize the full impact of how becoming a parent changed us because we were still young. We just kind of went with the flow. We made the adjustments that we had to make. And I'm not saying that it wasn't a big change, but it wasn't as big of a change, especially, when I look back on it, this change into this transition into the second half of life, midlife, perimenopause, whatever you want to call it, this has been a lot bigger change, more impactful, all encompassing kind of change than becoming a parent, becoming a mom. A lot changes. And when so much changes, our brain, especially being older and wiser now, and understanding the comprehensive overall weight of all of this change, understanding our brain looks even harder for explanations. And sometimes those explanations sound like, I'm just getting old. I'm just maybe getting lazy, or I'm just being inconsistent and I can't find consistency anymore. I don't have discipline anymore. I guess this is just who I am now. This is just how I look and feel in my 50s or at this stage. Or a lot of women will describe it to me as feeling fat, frumpy, 50. And I think that's where kind of the like almost settling for, I guess, this is just who I am now. It makes that leap in our brain feel easier in some way, which seems so contradictory because nothing about this feels easy. So when this happens, and I realized it happened, and I worked through how to make a huge shift, and now I use that. So one of the things, let me kind of go on to this part of what I wanted to get to. One of the things I do in coaching, in the mentorship that I have for women in their 50s, it probably surprises a lot of people because it's not about handing out another meal plan. Oh, it's Monday, let's hand out another meal plan. It's not about just changing how someone is exercising or giving them workouts. It's about slowing the conversation, the internal conversation and the slowing the conversation down. Because I want to know, is the explanation she's giving herself actually true? And here's why I care so much about that. Because the explanation you believe becomes the problem you spend your time and energy and money trying to solve. If I believe I'm lazy, I'm going to spend my energy trying to become more disciplined. If laziness was never actually the problem, I'm solving the wrong thing. And that's just one example. And maybe you can think of tons and tons of instances and problems in life where you actually landed on the wrong explanation, and that cost you a lot of time and energy and probably money too, trying to solve the wrong problem. And I don't know, the more lately, especially, the more conversations I've had with women, it's really made me sit with this and revisit it even more in the last few weeks and think about, like, in my own life, even still, like, where have I accepted an explanation without questioning it? Not because I'm weak. I mean, hell, and not because I'm not smart or, in tune with things, because I just explained to you how this happens. I know, I know how it happens. And so it's not because I'm not paying attention or I don't understand it, but because it felt true. That explanation, the first thing that my brain served up, felt true. And maybe that's something in a place where it's worth slowing down. So maybe before we just decide what our experience says about us, we owe ourselves a chance to understand what's actually happening. Have you slowed down to look at what's actually happening? Have you slowed down and asked yourself if there's another explanation other than the one that your brain jumps to first? Because I really do think that that's one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves at this stage of life. It's not quicker answers. It's really the gift is asking better questions of ourselves. So that's what I've been thinking about. It's what I wanted to share with you today. If this is something you can relate to, I'd love to hear it. And I appreciate you spending time with me, and I'll see you right back here next time.